I was thinking about that earlier. I was trying to figure out like what was the moment at which, and I can't remember the exact moment, but I remember getting my 30-day chip. And I remember at that meeting, it was a small meeting and they let you talk when you got your 30-day chip, at birthday night. And I said, this is the only time I realized that I was worth it. And there was something in me that changed where I wasn't doing it for anybody else. And I decided that I deserved it. Not that my husband didn't deserve a sober wife, not that my daughter and my other children didn't deserve a sober mother, but I deserved to be sober because there was a whole life I was missing out on that I didn't know anything about.
That was Cyndy L, and this is the SHAIR Podcast.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the SHAIR Podcast. And today we have my beautiful friend Cyndy L joining us on the show. Cyndy has been with the SHAIR Recovery Network now for over a year. Super active participant, avid listener, and your typical girl next door. She reached out to me quite a few months back and asked if she could share her story. And I just love interviewing the members inside the SHAIR Recovery Network. She's also a very active member of the SRC, the SHAIR Recovery Community, our new online meeting platform, and our relationship has just evolved. It's an honor to call her my friend, and I am so grateful to have her on board because Cyndy's life today is nothing like it was when she was in active addiction. And there's no question about it. It is a miracle that Cyndy is alive today. Her story is absolutely unbelievable. So let's dive into Cyndy's story, but first, a quick message from our sponsors. Are you ready to take control of your business, family, and personal life? Are you ready to get clear, get focused, and get results now? Are you ready to boost your confidence through the roof? Well, it's time to level up and add passion, fulfillment, and purpose back into your life right now. My name is Omar Pinto, and I am a certified NLP life coach specializing on enhancing your business, family, and personal life, as well as a certified peer-to-peer recovery specialist who specializes in addiction recovery. Let me show you how to create balance, harmony, and success into your life daily. Go to www.omarpinto.com and schedule a free consultation with me today. Today's episode of the SHAIR Podcast is brought to you by the SHAIR Recovery Community. The SHAIR Recovery Community is our new online recovery resource that offers online recovery meetings as well as peer-to-peer recovery support and coaching that will enhance your journey in recovery. If you find it difficult to make regular meeting attendance in your area or are unable to find the recovery meetings that fit your needs, then the SHAIR Recovery Community is the perfect place for you. And the best part is you can try out the SHAIR Recovery Community for the introductory rate of only $1 in the first month, and after that, it's only $12 a month. That once again include live online meetings, peer-to-peer support, and recovery coaching. So for more information about this amazing recovery resource, go to www.theshairpodcast.com, go to the top of the navigation bar, and click on the button that says SHAIR Recovery Community. And join the SHAIR Recovery Community for only $1 today. And if you'd like to contribute to the SHAIR Podcast by putting $1 in the virtual basket, then go to www.theshairpodcast.com, go to the top right corner of the page, and click on the button that says Donate, and drop $1 in the basket today. And if you'd like to access another free resource as powerful or even more powerful than the SHAIR Podcast, then join us in the SHAIR Recovery Network. It is our free private Facebook group that is active 24/7 from people all over the world. If you're seeking recovery, then go to Facebook, go to the search bar, type in SHAIR Recovery Network, and join this free recovery resource today. And if you haven't done so already, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. It's one of the best ways to show your support for the podcast. Now, a quick message from Transitions Daily and then on to the show. Would you like to join a free, anonymous online group that offers a daily topic email with popular recovery resources accompanied by a secret Facebook group for discussion? Then go to dailyaaemails.com for more information about Transitions Daily. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends, in meetings, and with sponsees in recovery. Hey, Cyndy, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to have you on the show today. How you feeling?
I'm good. A little nervous, but I'm okay.
All right. Nothing to be nervous about. It's rock
I'm
and roll
good.
time.
Good day.
Right. She's good. She's good. All right. So, folks, today we have Cyndy L joining us on the SHAIR podcast. And she wrote me an email. I'm just going to read a little snippet of what she wrote me in the email. Cyndy writes, "My story involves being a slow learner. I went to my first meeting at 21 and picked up my 1-year chip at 40. It's taken me a long time to realize that many of the things that happened to me in my childhood and a whole lot of genetics put me in a great position to become an alcoholic. I joke that I'm the first alcoholic in my family to get sober." Sound about right, Cyndy?
Yep. Some people say they have the first person to go to college. I'm the first alcoholic to get sober.
I thought that was a cool little intro piece, right? As I read that off the email, I go, that's, I could dig it. I can dig it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you just said, right? Something, I was the first one to graduate from college. I was the first one to get my PhD. Yeah. I was the first one to get sober.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So Cyndy, before we dive into your story, tell us a little bit about what your normal daily routine looks like, including recovery.
Okay. So it's a lot different in the summertime than during the school year because it seems like every summer the wheels kind of fall off.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I try to have at least a half an hour before everybody else gets to just have a cup of coffee, pray a little bit, hopefully read something or listen to a bit of a podcast and just kind of get my head on straight because I've learned if I don't have a few minutes, it just does not go well. During the school year, this last school year, so my daughter's 10, my youngest daughter's 10. We have 3 children. They're 10, 19, and 22.
Wow.
When I drive her to, when we drive her to school, her and I tell each other 5 things that we're grateful for, and we say the Serenity Prayer together.
Aww.
And it's just sort of I'm trying to help her have an attitude of gratitude at the same time that I'm trying to help myself have an attitude of gratitude. So it just starts the day off the right way. I may use coffee as one of my things a few too many times. And when it's cold outside, she uses heated seats a lot, but that's okay. We're starting off on the right foot. In Texas, it's kind of ridiculous in that it's so hot right now that unless you get up at 5:00 in the morning, you're not sitting outside for a cup of coffee, but I try for a little while each day just to enjoy the quiet, before the hustle and bustle.
Right.
In terms of recovery, I work a couple days a week as a nurse. And so on the days that I drive back and forth to work, I listen to podcasts or I listen to audiobooks. I've been sort of lax about going to meetings the last year or so. But I joined the SHAIR recovery community and I've been to 2 or 3 meetings in the last 2 or 3 weeks, which is more than I've been to in the last year. So that's a good thing. And I try to interact in the SHAIR recovery network. Yeah. The online thing seems to work for me really well because it doesn't matter what's going on here. I can just kind of hop onto a meeting somewhere, from a different room in the house while everybody's doing their thing. So that works really well. Yes. And not every day is like that. I try to start off the right way, but not every day works out like that.
Right. But access to resources is key, right? And the more resources you have at your disposal, the better you're at for when you need them, right? You never know what's going to come your way, right? You're a nurse, you're a mom, you're a wife, right? There's all these different roles that you're playing. There's different levels of stress depending on the day, depending on the activity, right?
Yep.
And sometimes because of all the responsibilities, right, I don't have a chance to get to the traditional meeting, which is
Right.
involves, I got to drive there, park, go in, meeting, you know, and then just darting out right afterwards is usually kind of like, you know, I like to fellowship a little bit, you know what I mean? It just seems kind of weird that I would be like, we close with the serenity prayer, right? And then as soon as, and then boom, I'm out the door, right? So then we're talking about, it could be a 2-hour commitment just to do a meeting. For some people.
And sometimes they just honestly don't have it.
Yeah. So the Share Recovery community now has the online meetings in it. So that helps. And then the Share Recovery Network is a beast. It's 24/7. So you basically
but it's so huge though. I mean, it's like there's been times where I've just been like sort of wound up about something and I just need to get it out there, and it's late at night and I don't want to wake my sponsor up because it's not a crisis. I'm not about to pick up, but I just need to kind of throw it out there and, you know, and I can.
Absolutely.
So I like
24/7. You could be up at 3:00 in the morning. Right.
Yeah.
And somebody,
or I'm wound up about something. I go on there thinking I want to go rant and rave about something, and I see somebody else who's hurting, who's struggling, and that takes me out of my head.
Contribution.
And I need that a lot. So
contribution.
Yeah.
Imagine having access to contribution immediately. And actually you can do it whenever you want because there's always something posted in there. Yep. I could literally take 5 to 10 minutes, scroll down the feed, congratulate somebody for an anniversary.
Yep.
Give my 2 cents on something someone's struggling with, right?
Yep.
And all of a sudden feel like, I'm good.
Yeah. And I ended up, I temporarily sponsored 2 women just while they were looking for somebody local. So they just had a person to check in with every day, to reach out to if they were really struggling. And one of them has already found a sponsor in person. And then the other one, she's in New York and she still checks in with me every day until she finds somebody that she can find there. Just because, I mean, it was hard for me to find a sponsor. So if I can serve that purpose for somebody of just, if the shit's hitting the fan and you need to talk to somebody on the phone, I can do that.
So these are 2 members in the Share Recovery Network.
Yep.
So, and here's the thing. I don't even know half the stuff that's going on there. It's so great to hear.
Yes.
Like it's even more expansive than I even know, because I've always said, because I see people post in there, I finally went to my first meeting. I finally got a sponsor. I finally started working the steps. Like after all these years of talking about it and resisting it, after being in here X amount of time, I finally did it. So I've always kind of seen Share as the bridge to a pathway, whatever pathway that may be. It's not for me to decide. It allows you to discover the pathway. Now you can also, you were the pathway, you know, for somebody's sponsorship. While they were getting an actual physical sponsor, you were the bridge between those two. Wow. So it's the game changer. And the cool thing is it's so effortless that you don't even recognize how much it's doing for you inside, because you're able to contribute, you're able to help, but it's like this. It's instantaneous for them and for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So this is just a shameless plug. 'Cause I mean, seriously, if you're listening to this right now, like, oh my God, Share Recovery Network and the Share Recovery community, just join.
Yes.
Right. If you're not in there, just do both. Right. Like,
see, and he didn't ask me to do that. That's just natural.
No.
That's just the story that it is.
I'm just glad to know, like, on what level we're finally at. You know what I mean? Like the level of contribution. And people say that all the time. If I could just help one person, right? If I could just help one person. And now there's people in there that are doing that all the time. All right. So we're going to segue off of that. So Cyndy, tell us how much clean time you have and when's your anniversary date?
I have a little over 7.5 years, October 23rd, 2010.
23rd, 2010. So we are coming up on 8 years, baby. Woohoo! Love it.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us, Cyndy, how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Okay, so I'm laughing because every time I listen to a new episode, I laugh at this question. So my parents were of the age that they were sort of told by the pediatrician that, your kid has a bad cold, whatever, it's okay to put a little whiskey in the tea or a little. Yeah. So I know that I had whiskey and shots of coffee brandy at a very young age, and I don't remember being upset about it, but I remember having my first sip of beer when I was about 7, and I remember liking it. Like, I distinctly remember I took the sip, I went to take another one, and everybody was like, hey, no, put that down. Yeah, 7. And then I know my first blackout was at 14.
Wow. Okay.
Because apparently I thought it was a good idea to drink Bacardi 151 while I weighed like 85 pounds soaking wet. And, it didn't work out well.
So here, and I love this right here because it's Bacardi 151 at 14.
Yes. Yes.
And so the next part of that question was, how did it make you feel?
Drinking always, until, I got sick, it was great. I just felt more comfortable and I felt happy. I would be lying if I didn't say that for a very long time, alcohol was a very good friend. It bit me in the ass, but it was a very good friend.
Well, the thing is that if it did not bring ease and comfort into our lives, we wouldn't have done it. If you weren't 7 years old, took a sip of beer and went, ooh, that was nice, right? Because it doesn't taste good. I can't imagine a 7-year-old that would be like, this beer is delicious, right? Yeah. It's probably more like, ooh, something happened. I feel bubbly. Yeah. Can I hit that again?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, great. All right, Cyndy, it looks like you're all warmed up, so it's time for me to turn this show over to you. It's time for you to share your story, your battle with drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life when you hit rock bottom, and then finally your journey into recovery up until today. So, Cyndy, please take it away.
Okay. So I started drinking early. So I remember my freshman year in high school, that was the Bacardi 151 incident. It was also when I started smoking weed. I remember my parents used to leave for work and I would stand on the back stairs and I would get high before I went to school. I still was a straight A student who was National Honor Society. I went to college on an academic scholarship.
Wow.
Very high functioning partier.
Yeah.
And I think back now and I remember, the people who dressed like they were doing drugs used to get in a whole lot more trouble than I did. And I was actually doing the things they were getting in trouble for. So, my parents, they kind of had they were a tight-knit family. There was a lot of family events until my grandmother on my mom's side passed away when I was 12. And after that, like my parents their social life became about going out with their friends and going drinking. And so I kind of got left to my own devices. They used to, every Friday, they got out of work by 1:00 in the afternoon and they hit the bar and they would be there to close it down.
1:00?
1:00 in the afternoon till 2 a.m.
Wow. Every day?
Every Friday. Friday.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Go. That's fine.
So they were, they kind of did this thing where it was like, they didn't drink all the time, but when they did, man, they were off to the races. And I followed that blueprint to a fine, I can't think of the word, but I followed that blueprint.
To the letter.
So, I kind of got left to my own devices and, so they'd be gone to a party. I wasn't supposed to go out. I did. And I'd get to sneak back in before they got home. Somewhere in my freshman year of high school, I think I was just overcome with too many bad decisions. So I was drinking and I was smoking weed. I I was sleeping around and that wasn't working out so well for me. I wasn't getting along with my best friend, and I woke up one morning and I got in an argument with my mother, and I decided to run away to New York City. And I grew up in Massachusetts, by the way. So I was in Massachusetts at the time. So I knew where my parents hid their stash of cash. I stole some of it. I called a cab and I took a bus to New York City. Anyone who doesn't believe in a higher power, this is the first of many parts of my story where it just shows that there is one, because I have no business still being sitting here talking about this.
No doubt.
So I, took a bus to New York City. I got off the bus to New York City. I didn't have a plan when I got there. I kept walking around one block. And then eventually, this guy who was in his early 20s, I guess, asked me what I was doing. I told him the truth. He took me home. And luckily, he wasn't completely psychotic, but obviously there was something to be exchanged for having a place to sleep. So that I didn't like so much. And then he had a friend who took me to somebody else's house, and I just remember it was like, so, for lack of a better word, white trash. Like, they had dogs, and there was like dog poop in the shower, and it was just something I had never seen. And
how old were you?
Apparently she figured out I was a runaway. Huh?
How old were you?
14.
Oh my God. This is you at 14? Sorry.
14.
Sorry. Wow. Okay.
No, I know.
Stop right there. Okay. Okay. Wow. Go. Okay.
So she called whatever version in New York CPS was, or actually I was in Jersey City by then. He had taken me across the border into Jersey City. They called the police, the uniformed officers came and got me, and then they took me to a detective or a youth officer. I don't know. And I wish I had this man's information, because he sat down with me and he said, however bad your life is, kid, you don't want to go in the system. This is your line. You've got to make a decision. You need to go home and you need to do well in school. And he really talked me through a lot of stuff. And, they had me talk to a counselor, and he actually wrote to me like 3 times after I went home, to just encourage me to do the right things. And I did, I did the right things in school. I was still drinking. I was still, smoking a little weed here and there, but, I had my life a little bit better under control. I wasn't running away anywhere. The one thing that kept happening during high school, and it's funny, I forgot about it until recently, is whenever there was a house party, I never wanted to go home. I never, ever wanted to go home. And so there was always this, situation where my parents are now driving the streets to figure out where the local house party was that weekend, because their drunk daughter is at it and doesn't want to leave. And I realize now it was because I was off to the races and I was drinking. I didn't want to stop, so, but, I graduated from high school and I got an academic scholarship, and I went and got my degree, and I dated somebody for most of those 4 years, and we partied, and, I always partied a little bit more than anybody thought I should, but never so much as to cause too many problems. And I did crazy stuff. Just crazy stuff. So I guess I should back up for 1 second, is that one of the 2 of the things that happened to me when I was younger, like maybe between 10 and 12, is because my parents were partying a lot. We'd be either with relatives and everybody was partying, or friends of theirs and everybody was partying, and I know now, as a person who's 46, that you should not leave a 10 to 12-year-old girl with a 15 to 16-year-old boy. And so I know that firsthand. And at the time, I always thought it was like this, he thought I was cute, and I thought and what was really confusing for me is that in both of those situations, when I tried to talk to either one of those people after, they said it didn't happen. And that was even more who would imagine that, right? So it's something that I didn't think about for a really long time. And then when I started to put it together, I was like, oh, well, that could explain, some of my behavior with men as I got older. So went to college, engaged to be married during my junior year of college. apparently that freaked me out. So I cheated on him. And then I told him that I cheated on him. So that ended the engagement.
Mm-hmm. Great exit strategy. Great exit strategy.
Yeah. You'll notice there's a pattern that goes on here. So, we split up, and at the time I had a great job. I was an HR manager at 21 years old for a small company. But the shit that I got away with, it's amazing. I mean, on Fridays, I would go out to lunch and I would drink 2 or 3 beers and go back to work. And I was the HR manager. I was going out to drink probably 3, 4, 5 nights a week. It was under the guise of, here, I'm being a member of the Chamber of Commerce and I'm going to all these functions. But, other people would go and they would have a drink or two and they would go home. I, on the other hand, just kept going. So, I had a couple fender benders. I hit a little bit of somebody's brick fence on my way home one night, but I managed to not get caught for that. Little things like that. I seemed to always get away with it. I was really good at kind of just skating by the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, it was starting to hit that point where I had, I guess about the time I was 27, I had been sleeping around too much. And I had been drinking like all the bars too much. And so I needed a change. So I got this brilliant idea to go and get my MBA in Dublin, Ireland.
Oh, wow.
And so I applied and I got accepted. And about 2 months before I left, maybe 3 or 4 months before I left, I met someone and we started dating and, things were going really well, but I was still going. And so I went to Ireland, and of course the problem was I was still there. So, somehow or another I got my MBA, but man, I spent a lot of money drinking in Ireland during that 1 year. It was a 1-year program. It was really intense. I would love to tell you that I was faithful to that boyfriend back in the US during that year, but I was not. And, it was just crazy stuff. I know for many, many other reasons, but I also know that I cannot drink because when I drink at about beer number 5, I forget that I want to do anything other than sleep with the guy that I'm talking to. And, it's a horrible thing, but I know it's true about me. And if they have an Irish accent, definitely it's going to happen. So I used to joke that if anybody had an Irish accent, my pants just automatically fell off. Not nice, but funny. So I went to Ireland for the year. I got my MBA. I came back and I went to work for a credit union in Connecticut. And somehow or another, everywhere I worked, like I figured out who the party people were, right? So figured out who the party people were there. We would go out drinking, blah, blah. Still dating the guy that I was dating before I went away to Ireland because, of course, he didn't know that I had been unfaithful during that year. And he had come over and visited a couple times. So we dated for a while. He had some issues with my drinking. I remember I just kept trying to change myself into who I thought he wanted me to be. And he didn't ask me to do that. I know that now, but I just kept trying to be who I thought he wanted me to be. And I couldn't seem to get there with this equipment. So, I just remember stupid things like, his 30th birthday party. I got drunk, shocker, and I blacked out. And apparently, my parents were at that party. And apparently, I went to make a toast and my mother did not pick up the glass. And I stopped in the middle of my toast and looked at my mother and said, pick up the fucking glass. I'm making a toast here.
Oh, wow.
And there was always those kind of stories. Yeah. There was always those stories the next day. It was like, do you remember what you said to? And I was like, no. What was that? What? Oh, okay. Or I threw a party for him for something and one of his friends was supposed to show up and he didn't. And I ended up, when I was drunk, I blew up that guy's phone and left like 25 messages to complain that he wasn't there for the party. Yeah, I was ridiculous. And I know that. So he instituted a 3-drink limit. So anytime we went anywhere, I had a 3-drink limit. That was it. No more than 3 drinks. Now that should be a sign. So, I tell you that to tell you this. So we break up after a few years together, almost 4 years together. And we were at this bar that we used to go to every Thursday night after work. We'd go to this bar, we'd have 3 drinks, and then we would go have chicken parm at this Italian restaurant. This was the routine. So he breaks up with me at this bar. And my response, among other things, was, well, then I'm having more than 3 fucking drinks.
Yeah.
And I look at that now and I think, oh my God, 4-year relationship ending. And my answer is, well, I get to drink now. Okay.
How long did you manage to, how long was that rule in place before he broke up with you? How long was that rule in place? The 3 drink?
It was probably about 6 months to a year.
You managed to make, wow.
Well, it was if I was with him though. So there was different times where like, I went out with one of my friends one night, right? This is, oh God, I forget some of these things sometimes. So
great.
I was out with one of my friends one night and she lived about 20 minutes away and I'm on my way home and I get pulled over by a state trooper. Now I am shit-faced. There is no doubt. But somehow I convinced this state trooper to let me go. Wow. And so I get home and I call her from the bathroom on my cell phone and I'm like, you're not going to believe this. I got pulled over, but I got away with it, blah, 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 blah. And I'm all celebrating. And I just remember like crawling into bed very quietly. And as soon as my head hit the pillow, he went, where the have you been? And I was like, oh shit. Hi. And it was always stuff like that where, it was like he ended up being the parent in the relationship. Mm-hmm. Like he was trying to keep me in line. And honey, that's a full-time job when I'm drinking. So it didn't work out. So we broke up. And then friends of mine happened to have a friend. His name was Michael, who was just starting to go through a divorce. And he was a serious partier. Like I had drank with him before. And so that seemed like a good idea. Mm-hmm, and so he was 18 years older than I was. And yeah. And we had, I will say I had so much fun. Like there wasn't a whole lot of drama. There wasn't, my liver probably hurt at the end of that year, but he also like taught me things like just get over it. Like just be happy, And so I learned to be a little bit more laid back during that year and a half. I didn't really like by then I was living in Connecticut too, because I was working in Connecticut. And so I decided to apply for a job that was in Rhode Island and he encouraged me to do it. He wanted to get out of Connecticut too. And I got the job. And so we moved to Rhode Island together. He stayed for about 6 months and then he was like, I just don't think this is working out. He knew that at some point I wanted to have a family. At the time I was 28 and he was in his 50s or late 40s. I don't know. So, he had already been married. He had a full grown son. He didn't want to do that. And he saw that, so I kind of give him credit for seeing that and just saying like, enough is enough.
Yeah.
So he left. And then I had already found the party people at my new job too. So that was good. And one of them, I, hung out with her and her son was a partier too. And they were doing a little bit of coke on the side. And I had only done coke once before in my life. And I liked it when I did it. So not shockingly, I liked it again. But then I also started smoking it. And I just didn't have the money to support that habit. And at the time, the company I was working for kept flying me down to Texas for, different trainings or projects or stuff like that. And so I tell the joke and people think I am kidding that I came to Texas. I went into a convenience store and I gave a $20 bill and I got 3 packs of cigarettes and a big 40-ounce of Miller Lite and I got change and I thought I need to live here because it was cheap. Good decision making, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. So good.
I also, while I was here, like I was here on business, and this is all human resources people, whatever. I'm at this bar, restaurant thing with a couple of the guys that I work with. And I start talking to this guy, and it was funny. I forever have called him the tall Texan. He was 6'6". He was handsome. He was a gentleman. He was really super sweet. He was also kind of crazy. But I went home with him that night, and, we stayed in contact for a couple of years. He helped me find my apartment when I moved to Texas, a year later. So, it was, I kind of knew, I guess it was less than a year later. I knew that if I didn't get away from the supply, the access that I had to Coke, it was going to be bad. Like, I just knew that. And so I moved myself. So I quit my job. I sold everything I had, just about, except for whatever fit into a car. Oh, right before I left, though, I got into a head-on collision and walked away with nothing but a broken rib, which is higher power.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. I had forgotten to pay my car insurance. And so technically I should not have had that car paid for by the insurance. And a friend of mine did some research, and in the state of Rhode Island, they have to give you 30 days to cancel. And I had the envelope with the postmark showing they only gave me 24 hours notice. So they had to pay the claim.
Oh, wow.
Higher power.
Oh.
Yep. Yep. So that paid off my car, gave me a little bit of money to move to Texas. And I moved to Texas. And so I got down here, and then so that was 2005. I moved down here. And I basically just started this same routine, except, I grabbed a couple of waitressing jobs until I figured out what I wanted to do next. I thought I wanted to go back to school and become a nurse. But my drinking habit and going to classes was not really working out well together. So, I just basically worked at the restaurant and then went out drinking with everybody at the end of the night. And, I had my rotation of people I could, bond with late in the wee hours. And, that was it. And then I contacted a temp agency. And so they found me a job where I could work. It was like 2 to 10 or something like that at this FBO at airport, which is basically like where all the rich people fly in on their planes, and you're the receptionist that's just there to greet them. So this is 2006, which is where I meet my husband. So I was working the front desk. He would always talk to me when I was at the front desk. And I really I have to say, he was the first guy I'd met in a long time that I was sober when I met him. And I really liked him. He made me laugh. And so I really wanted him to ask me out, and he just didn't. And it was annoying. And I was flirting with him shamelessly, but it wasn't working. And so eventually, I guess we met in like February. In June, I walked into the bar where everybody kind of went into after work, and he was in there, and he looked at me and he said, "Game on." It's like, all right.
He said those actual words?
He said, "Game on."
Okay.
So he and I and a couple other people, we left that bar. We went to another bar, people told me like he had been divorced for a long time and that he was a true gentleman and whatever. And so we were drinking a lot. And I realize now he may not have been drinking as much as I was, but I was drinking a lot. And so he said, listen, you obviously can't drive, but you can come home to my place. Nothing needs to happen here. You can just sleep there. Apparently I was quite persuasive. So that was the first time we consummated our relationship. Sadly, I will tell you that I do not remember the first time we consummated our relationship. I kind of came out of a blackout in the middle of that, but so he was divorced and he had 3 children at the time. And so, this was like right at the end of June. And for the month of July, he would take all 3 kids for the whole month. So he was very honest. He's like, listen, I take my kids July 1st to July 31st, and that is my whole focus. And, this is too new for you to meet them. So like, we can talk on the phone, but I'll see you in August. So I went back to drinking and doing whatever I was doing for the next 31 days.
Mm-hmm.
We talked on the phone. I found somebody down there who had Coke, or down here that had Coke. I did it once and I thought, no, you need to stop. And so I stopped Coke. So, yay me, right? So we started going out in August, went on a couple of dates, really just enjoyed each other's company. I told him that my drinking had been an issue in past relationships. I'm sure that I plated it up in a much different way than was reality. He said, don't worry about it. It won't be an issue. And by the third week of August, we were engaged to be married.
Wow. Okay.
So I moved in with him. We started planning our wedding. We got married in April of 2007. This is where it gets interesting. For some bizarre reason, he always had this dream to own a bar. And so we were living in this small East Texas town, and there was a bar for sale. And even though we didn't have the money, we put together a group of friends and we bought a bar. So it's not really a good business plan to buy a bar with an alcoholic. Just doesn't work out well. So, as time went on, there was lots of episodes of, he would say, okay, it's your night at the bar, whatever, try not to get drunk tonight. And, it was never for lack of trying. It was just, I didn't seem to realize that if I picked up the first one, that was it. It took me a long time to learn that lesson. There was lots of nights where, I got drunk. Oh, wait. So we bought the bar in June. In August, I found out I was pregnant. So with the exception of a couple of beers here and there, I did not drink for the majority of my pregnancy. I did do a couple of shots the day before she was born, and I am not proud of that fact at all. It's probably one of the things that, I know you're not supposed to regret the past, but that's one that sticks with me. So she was born on St. Patrick's Day, which I truly believe was my higher power's way of giving me something else to do but drink on St. Patrick's Day, because that's been a national holiday my whole life. I was trying to be a good mom, and I don't think I was doing too bad, but every time it was my turn to go to the bar, I just couldn't seem to help get drunk. And then I would get home, and then I would yell at him because he would be upset that I was drunk, and then I would threaten to take her, and I was going to go to my brother's house in South Texas, and just drama and craziness. And by then my parents had moved down here, and so they were sort of involved in that drama, and that brought up a lot of issues for me that I didn't realize existed with them. And it was just crazy. It was just a crazy time in our lives. Like, I can't even describe it. And so we get, we sort of start to get through that. He kind of gives me an ultimatum at one point that's like, listen, you got to get sober. Like, you got to stop. And so I started going to meetings. I know that it was sometime in the summer of 2008, because his middle son from his previous marriage passed away in the fall of 2008, and I was sober then. No, I was not. Sorry, I take that back. It was after that I went, because at his son's funeral, I got drunk that night, and he had to worry about me. His father died the following spring, and I was sober for that funeral. Sorry, I got my funerals confused.
His son passed away?
His son passed away. He was 10 years old. He had a terminal illness. He had been diagnosed when he was 3 years old. This will sound so bizarre, but I think the fact that I was such a head case and such a mess made it okay for me to deal with him, because I don't think I knew how to feel anything. And so he could talk to me about all that stuff. And whereas now, if you were to talk to me about something like that, I would cry with you. I was like, okay, like, I'm listening. I had a wall that just hadn't been penetrated yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess it was after that I got sober for about 6 months. So his father passed away at the beginning of March 2009. I got sober for about 6 months in there. And then I decided, after going to meetings and listening to people talk about relapse, that there was a step 1A that I had missed. And it sounded like they had all this extra experience, strength, and hope from going out and relapsing. So I thought that I should do that too. So I actually bought a small bottle of Kahlua on my way to a meeting and poured it into my Starbucks coffee so I could drink at the meeting.
Oh, wow. That's a first.
Yeah. And, you know, I like to be special.
Okay.
So, and I remember feeling so guilty while I was sitting there doing it. And I remember my sponsor at the time, I don't know if she was looking at me like she knew something was up or I was imagining it, but I just was like, oh shit.
Busted.
And then I proceeded to go to our bar and tell my husband that I had relapsed, but that I had talked to my sponsor, and she said, well, since you already drank today, you might as well just keep going tonight and start again tomorrow.
Oh,
which was a bold-faced lie.
Snap. Of course it was.
So, and I think he just was like, I'm not going to argue with you, whatever, just whatever. So I started drinking again. He's like, you're going to have to keep it under wraps. Like, you're going to have to keep control of this thing. I was like, okay, I can do that. And so I did for a little while. And then in March of 2010, he had a heart attack. He was 38 years old at the time. And he had the widowmaker. So his front artery was blocked 95%. They had to stick him in a helicopter, put a stent in, and, you know, his heart was damaged from that. It has since really, like, it's not as strong as someone who's never had a heart attack, but it's in way better shape than it should be for that heart attack. Again, higher power.
Yeah.
So, what I did not know then, which, you know, a lovely therapist explained to me when I did get sober, was that sent me into 9 levels of outer space because I had lost my grandmother to a heart attack. And my grandmother was the one person in my life, in my childhood, who loved me wholeheartedly without condition. And so I was off to the races. And not only was I off to the races, I was going to be off to the races with somebody else, and it was going to be a customer at our bar. And I tried to hide it, sort of, you know, as much as anyone who's drinking a whole lot can hide anything. Mm-hmm. He eventually had enough of my drinking and said, you know, you need to stop. And he said, but I'm sorry, my dogs are barking in the background.
It happens.
Yes. So he didn't say it like the first time he had asked me to get sober, it was like an ultimatum. This time was, here's a couple $100, give me your key to the bar, give me your key to the house, and go. And so I did. And I went and hung out with the person that, you know, I thought was a better idea than him for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. And then I came back and, you know, I was in therapy already at this time, trying to work my way through all this stuff. And so I came back and, you know, we started working our way through all of that stuff. And it was really hard. You know, I knew I needed to focus on myself, but I also was trying to figure out this thing between, you know, did I need to stay with my husband? Did I need to, you know, and I remember my sponsor telling me at the time, and it was funny, it was an old timer. It was a man, which I know you're not supposed to do, but he had seen me come in and out of the rooms there at that group for a couple of years. And so he grabbed me and he said, until you find a woman to sponsor you, I'm keeping an eye on you because somebody has to. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know, you will discontinue contact with that man. That's it. You know, which was the smartest thing for somebody to tell me. And I'm glad that he did. But I still was, you know, I was still struggling with it. And so we had the bar. I I may have forgotten to mention I got thrown out of our bar a couple of different times. Yeah. Yeah, it actually like became like there was all kinds of crazy.
A running joke.
I remember one time,
It's like a running joke.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was one time I was at home and I wanted to leave and my husband wouldn't leave and he took my car keys away from me and I called the police because he would not give me my car keys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that now and I think, what resources was I taking away from actual crime for a police officer to have to talk to me about the fact that, yes, my husband was doing the right thing, taking the keys away from the drunk lady, and whatever. So there was all that. And then, so I was going to 2 different groups. And I mean, some people do 90 meetings in 90 days. I think I might've done 180. I mean, I was going almost twice a day, almost every day. Because I just didn't know what to do. And I was so scared that I would start drinking again. And the funny thing is, all the times in my life before when somebody wanted me to stop drinking, it was because I was going to lose a relationship or I was going to lose a friend or, I went at 21 because one of my friends said, I'm not drinking with you anymore. You need to go to a meeting. I went in my late 20s because my friends were like, listen, you're getting out of hand. When I went this last time, it was, I have lost me. I don't know who I am anymore because my whole life, I wanted to be married and I wanted a child and I wanted a family and I was doing everything in my power to run that off. And it didn't make sense. And so I will never forget being at this meeting. It was a noontime meeting and there was this cute elderly woman. Her name was Mary and she was just so sweet. And I had not talked in this meeting at all. I had not shared a bit of my story in that meeting. And she walked up to me and she said, I remember when I was first getting sober and I couldn't decide if I wanted to stay with my husband. And then I realized if I told my daughter that he wasn't good enough for me, then I was saying that he wasn't good enough to be her father.
Ooh.
And I just started bawling because I had never said anything. And I was like, if that's not God, if that's not my higher, like it's still to this day gives me chills. And so I was like, okay, well, there's that sign.
Right.
We need to work this out. And so, I did the work, and we moved when I was, I guess, about 3 months sober. We moved, we worked on selling the bar. We sold the bar. We got out of all that stuff. I remember in the 3rd month I was sober, the transmission on my car went, the engine on his car went. We were so broke. It was so bad. It was just, and so we moved. And then the town that we went to, like every time I had tried to pick a sponsor, anytime I've gotten sober, I'm not good at it. My sponsor picker is broken. And so I kept going to this group and I didn't really know who I wanted to ask. And so I showed up for this 8:00 meeting at night and this group was hopping all the time. And it was just one woman. And her and I sat there and talked for an hour. No one else showed up for the entire meeting. And I was like, oh, will you be my sponsor? Because I had talked to her for an hour and I wasn't. And I was like, and she's like, yeah, I think that's kind of a God thing because there's never not anybody here at this meeting. And she's been my sponsor ever since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
HP.
Yeah.
Baby.
Even though I've moved here and there, she's always my sponsor and I love her because she can call me on my shit like nobody else and do it with love. So, so we moved, we started going to church too. I know that's not part of everybody's story. And at that moment in time, like it was the best church we could have ever found. My husband was raised Baptist and I was raised Catholic. And so we went to the Methodist church because that was sort of somewhere in the middle. And the pastor at that time there was just this amazing woman who she just made you think. And that was what I needed. And I just remember I would go to church the first couple of times and I would leave there and I would have to go right to the car because I would start crying because there was a joy that it was too, overwhelming. And I have that experience at meetings sometimes, I hear something that just hits me. And so then we had the opportunity to move to San Antonio for a while, and we did that. There's a joke in there about that. My husband wanted to apply at 2 different companies. One was local and one was in San Antonio. I wanted to move to San Antonio, so I sent that resume about a week before the other one. So we went to San Antonio, and 3 months after we were there, they offered him a promotion that brought us right back up to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I think my higher power has a sense of humor. And he was like, that's cute that you tried to control that, but let me show you how that's going to work. So all the while, I guess for a couple of years, I was a blogger. So I was one of the mommy bloggers, and I used to test out all these products and everything. And then I started going for my prerequisites for nursing school. And I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing last spring in 2015. And then I worked in an emergency room for a year, and then that wasn't really working for me. And then I started working at a cancer center about a month ago, and it works really much better because my husband travels a lot. So I don't know. I think I covered everything. It's hard. There's so many different things. I'm like all over the place.
No, that's the last thing I was thinking, right? I mean, it was this beautiful story, chronologically, in order, right? Which is impressive for someone who spent most of their using career in a blackout. So that's, you know what I mean? So to have that recollection and be able to kind of piece things together, right? Yeah. But I mean, go ahead.
I should add. So my husband and I bought our house 2.5 years ago, and we thought we both felt this very strong calling to move my parents in with us because they're elderly and we were a little bit more financially, situated than they were. And so we did. And then I remembered who they were after we lived with them for a little bit. And so then about 1.5 years ago, I guess, almost, we, had a conversation and said, we don't think this is working out. And we think that it would be better for us to still have a relationship if you moved out. And they did not take that well. And so they left without a forwarding address. And that really kind of sent me all over the place. It was kind of a rejection that even, in my 40s, being rejected by your parents really sucks. And so this past spring, I finally started therapy over it because I had talked to my sponsor, I had talked to my husband, I had talked to my pastor, I had talked to everybody. I had posted in the SHAIR Recovery Network. I mean, I had talked it to death, and I was stuck. And I was driving one day, I guess this was maybe February. I was driving and the thought occurred to me, and it wasn't the first time, that if I drank, I wouldn't feel this way. And at the moment I had that thought, I went, no. I know how this turns out. And I thought, okay, you haven't been going to meetings. You haven't been doing the things you're supposed to be doing. And so I called and reached out to my husband's EAP program. I got on the phone with my sponsor. I started to get more active in the SHAIR Recovery Network. I started doing all these things to go, okay, that's, and now, while I still know it's a 24-hour-a-day, reprieve, I feel like I'm in a much better position than I was then. So, but I still fight with it a little bit. Like the things with them, not the drinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're in a culture that is designed to make us feel guilty about pretty much everything.
Everything?
Yes. There is the idea of guilt and shame is the easiest way to manipulate and control people, right? So anything that you feel you should be doing, right, could trigger, right, these feelings of guilt and shame. And then what do I do with these, right? Because I hold myself responsible. I hold myself responsible to a certain degree. Because I don't know how else to process this information, because I feel like I should be doing better at this. I should have handled it better. I should have said this. I should have done that. I should have is a word used it's a shaming language, right? So many times as we grow up, right? That's what we know. So that we that's where you would start. You start by recognizing that this is part of my culture. This is part of how I was raised. And I'm going to feel this way because at the moment, it's the only coping mechanism that I can resonate with, right? Is This is how I resolve issues. So again, the more guilty I feel about the situation, then the more eventually I'll be like, no, just move back in. No. It's okay. Whatever. Because, I just want these feelings to go away instead of the idea of being raised, right? To have very strong boundaries, have very strong limits, have very, effective communication skills to be able to discuss things, right? Not just from the perspective of one party, to have the perspective from both, to remove the judgment from the conversation and say, well, here's where I'm at. Okay. Well, here's where I'm at. Okay. Well, is there a resolution here, or are we just completely on two different pages and we just have to live in different homes? Right. And so once you remove the emotional state from it, right, and you just take it for face value, I'm going to ask myself, right, what did it take for me? Like you said it yourself. I went to my first meeting when I was in my 20s, and I picked up my 1 year in my 40s, right? So I battled for 20 years trying to get sober, trying to get this under control, right? By myself, right? I had to do it by myself because I had no one else that I could reach out to, no one else that I could learn from, no one else that I could lean on. So I had to do this on my own. And this could have ended one of two ways, right? The way it is now, or jails, institutions, and death. But I had to make this decision on my own. You had to make these decisions on your own. So what your husband went through, right? What the kids went through, what you went through, right? So now you get to the other side. You get sober. You get your life in order. Great. Now we're getting normal, right? Or let's forget the word normal. We're getting healthy. All right. Let's use the word we're getting healthy, because I made some really tough choices that were good for me and for my family. I gave up some things that were killing me and were killing my family. I did all this work and struggled. And then I get to a situation where I can help, right? Because if this was 2.5 years ago and that means you were 5 years when they moved in. Yeah. Okay. So right around my 5-year mark is probably where I'm going to be the healthiest. I'm going to be the healthiest in my recovery, because that's what most of us experience, is that, right? 5 years. I officially get my head out of my ass, right? So now I'm in such a good place that I can help my parents in a way that they could never help me.
Yes.
And it didn't work out.
No, because they didn't want to be helped.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right. So if we talk about a fourth step, right, this can boil down to just simply one phrase: unrealistic expectations. That's That's all it is. And if I take all the piss and vinegar out of the whole equation, right, it's just unrealistic expectations on both sides, right? And then at the end of the day, it's like, hey, it's not working out. And if the decision is made that I'm going to hold a resentment, that's not on you.
Nope.
Right? That was, right? You did everything that you could based on what you felt was right at the time. And then you made another tough decision to disconnect with love because it wasn't good for your family.
Yep.
And it's as simple as that.
I had to.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I had to put my daughter and my husband first. And I don't regret that.
No. Life is about making tough decisions for the greater good. That's what, that's what being an adult's all about, right? Being an adult is making tough decisions for the greater good, right? And it doesn't matter, where the rubber meets the road and how this is going to affect one relationship, because in my hierarchy of values, right? My family, my current family, my husband and my daughter have to come first. They have to come first, right? And so that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And now I can remove all of that guilt and shame that doesn't belong, right?
Right.
It doesn't belong there. So anyway, I'm proud of you, right? I think you made the right decision. And, you know, at the end of the day, one of the beautiful blessings of getting clean and sober is being able to reconnect with your family. Because so many of us lose our families in the crossfires of addiction. We don't get it back. I didn't get mine back. Right? I had to lose my family, right, to find myself, to get clean and sober. The price I had to pay was I didn't get her back, right? And you know, were able to salvage that, right? And so that in and of itself
is a miracle.
Yes. Yeah. So I am going to protect that, right? I'm going to protect my family at all costs. And it doesn't matter what, right? I'm going to protect it like a mother lion protects her cubs, right? That's how I look at protecting my family, protecting my recovery, protecting my mental state, protecting my emotional state. Like everything that I've learned up until this point is constantly recognizing that I didn't work this hard for nothing, right? I worked this hard so I can make good decisions in my life. They're not always going to be easy, but I can make good decisions in my life that are for the greater good of me and for my family.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. All right. So I was trying to think of like what to come back at you at, right, with this whole thing. But there was, you know, like I take notes as I go through the interviews, right? But you tell such a beautiful story, Cyndy. You know, how many times have you told your story?
This is the first time.
No.
Yeah.
You need to like sign up to be a lead at your local meeting, right? This is a powerful story for women. This is a very, and it's beautifully told, it's beautifully said, right? And I'm glad we're doing it here, right? Because as much as, you know, I'm going to suggest that, you know, you think about, you know, getting a lead in your own community, right? Because that's also going to bring women into your circle closer to you, right? They'll connect with you. Yeah. But you're going to have, you know, thousands of people on the podcast that are going to listen, right? They're going to hear this message, which is why I do the podcast in the first place, because there's this beautiful sort of transition that goes from a child that just from the age of 10, right, has been suffering, right? Like from the age of 10 got a rude awakening, got a very, very tough dose of life way too early on, and had to learn how to defend herself, how to develop coping skills, how to cope and deal with life from such an early age, right? And at any given moment in your journey, it could have ended very, very badly, very, very badly. Oh. You know, and now you have this beautiful story that you can share with other women, right? And carry this message of hope, right? In a way that you probably never even imagined.
No. No. And I told you the day that I emailed you, I had been with my therapist, and so I've been trying to write. Mm-hmm. So I've created my blog name. I've bought my thing. It's called Evolving Opal. And I've sort of tasked myself with writing a little bit every day to start to get it off the ground, because, you know, everybody who knows me says I'm a good story writer, and I have all these stories and they're crazy. So I've been trying to kind of get that going. But the day I emailed you, I had seen her, and she said, you need to stop holding yourself back, because if you don't write your story, who will? Yes. And so I emailed you, and you boom, immediately emailed me back. And I was like, okay, HP baby. All right, let's do this. and I was scared to do it. But I mean, I don't feel scared now, but I was scared when we first started.
Yeah, no, once you get going, here's the thing, HP kicks in and, it carries you through. So,
yes, I mean, and some of it was funny. So.
Oh, classic. Really good stuff. All right. So with that being said, Cyndy, tell us how our listeners, right, how they can reach out to you. Many of them already know you because you're so active in the group. But tell us about what you currently have out there in social media, about the blog that's coming out, and how they can reach you.
Okay. So I have one Tumblr blog it's called weedsandsky.net. And it's just like quotes about sobriety and forgiveness and hope and love and just quotes that I read that make me feel good, or little short stories I've written or pictures I've taken that I really love because I've started photography as my habit of the year, or my hobby of the year. And I've been having fun with that. And then I'm trying to get a blog off the ground that's called Evolving Opal. So hopefully I'll get that off the, launch here over the summer. I'm in the middle of going for my master's in nursing as well, so I can become a professor in a few years. So my schedule is a little crazy, but I'm hoping to get that done. And my email address is evolvingopal@gmail.com.
So tell us a little bit about Evolving Opal. Where did that name come from?
So I was born in October, and the birthstone for October is an opal, and it is one of my favorite stones because if you look at it from different angles, it can look so different. And I sort of feel like that's how my life has been, is that depending on the angle I look at it, I can see so many different things. And I think that's how it is with everybody. I'm a firm believer that everybody you meet, there's a reason you meet them. There's something to learn from them, even if it's just a short amount of time. And I also think that everybody has some sort of thing going on that you just know nothing about. And I think we judge people. And I work really hard. I continue to work really hard at not doing that.
I love it. All right. So that's how we get a hold of Cyndy. And I'm going to have that listed on Cyndy's show notes on the SHAIR podcast website.
Thank you.
And so now we're going to start to close up. And the way we do is for the newcomer. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery and respond with questions for the newcomers. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
Okay. So the short answer, which is probably not the answer you're supposed to give, is that I really liked drinking. I liked it. So I didn't want to stop drinking. I wanted to stop having consequences, but I didn't want to stop drinking. And I didn't want to change. And honestly, I grew up with all the grownups around me drinking. So I really did not have a picture of what it looked like for someone not to. My husband truly was the first person I ever met in my life who thought, no, you can have a couple drinks and then that's it. I've seen him drink something and go, I didn't really like that, and walk away from it. And I'm like, what? What is that like? Like, there's alcohol you don't like? So, I just didn't understand that. So I don't think I wanted to change. I wanted to keep drinking.
No, that's a perfect answer. My wife's the same way, right? She's like, oh God, I'm really not. Yeah, I was kind of weird. I'm going to leave that. Really? Okay. Can you at least give it? Can you give it to somebody? Just, you know what I mean? Like feels like that's alcohol abuse. 15 years later, I still look at it like, no, somebody's got to drink it.
Yes.
Those are the beautiful reminders for me. That's always a beautiful reminder to go, you know what? Thank you, higher power, for reminding me that I am still an alcoholic. Hands down. Normal people aren't paying attention to somebody else's drinking. All right.
Yes.
So, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
I was thinking about that earlier. I was trying to figure out what was the moment at which and I can't remember the exact moment, but I remember getting my 30-day chip. And I remember at that meeting, it was a small meeting, and they let you talk when you got your 30-day chip, at birthday night. And I said, this is the only time I realized that I was worth it. And there was something in me that changed.
Wow.
Where I wasn't doing it for anybody else. And I decided that I deserved it. Not that my husband didn't deserve a sober wife, not that my daughter and my other children didn't deserve a sober mother, but I deserved to be sober because there was a whole life I was missing out on that I didn't know anything about. And then the other thing is, this is so weird, but I feel like it's an important part of my sobriety, is Craig Ferguson, who used to do the Late Late Show.
Mm-hmm.
I used to stay up and watch that when I was drunk, and it used to make me laugh. And it was one of the few things that when I got sober, it still made me laugh. And I think that's because he's sober.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a certain quirky sense of humor that we all have. And, I've seen him live twice now, and people like him and Robin Williams, they made me realize that you could be sober and you could still be funny. And that was important to me. So,
did you ever hear Craig Ferguson tell his story on national TV?
Yes.
That was absolutely epic and powerful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of my favorites. You say Craig Ferguson and I immediately go right there. Just a beautiful.
Oh yeah, we saw.
Yeah. What's that?
We saw him live this past year. And he said something about alcoholics, and I yelled really loud, and he answered me, and I thought, oh, my life is complete now. Craig Ferguson heard me yell. I'm good.
Dude, it's so good.
It's crazy.
All right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, Cyndy, do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery or you're reading now?
I didn't really read anything but the big book in early recovery, which I feel was very, very important. And I read it a lot. And I read the 12 and 12. And I read the whatever the thing is where you get 24 hours a day. That. Mm-hmm. These days, it's funny. I had never heard of Blackout until I listened to your podcast. Mm-hmm. And I read that book, I guess about 4 months ago, whenever it was that she was on. And I was like, oh my God, it's my story. It was just amazing. It was amazing to know that it wasn't just me who woke up in the middle of sex going, oh shit, what did I do? So it was really, it was good for me. And I love anything by Brene Brown. Oh. I've learned so much about how to just take a breath and really look at things a different way. And so I listen to her stuff on Audible a whole lot. It soothes me somehow. And her voice helps too. I mean, it's just amazing.
That woman is amazing. All things Brene Brown is just,
yeah.
And then just my own natural evolution to be able to say that.
Yes. Me too. Yes.
To be able to say,
you asked me that about 10 years ago, and I'm not talking about shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
was not raised to be vulnerable.
Yes. But think about Brene Brown has become synonymous with vulnerability, right? And extinguishing shame. It's like, what an amazing thing to be known for. Powerful messages. In 15 minutes, it's just the most amazing thing. Yes. I usually, I'll be like when you're stuck in that cycle, I'll be like all things Brene Brown. First of all, watch these 2 YouTube videos.
Yes.
And then go buy one of her books, right? Then we'll talk.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. No question about it. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
So it's hard to narrow it down to one. There's 2 that are my favorites. My very first sponsor, the old timer who pulled me aside and said, I'm going to keep an eye on you. He taught me that I could always start my day over, which was something I had never considered. So, I always had this attitude of like, if my day starts off and it's bad, well, that's it. Like, we're going to follow this ship right down into the ground. We're not going to And so he taught me to take a step back and say the Serenity Prayer and start over. And I thought, what a concept. I had no idea you could start over, right? And then my current sponsor says, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And that is something I really have to think about on a regular basis, because I sometimes get caught up in the rules or what's right or wrong or, all the justice things. And so then I have to go, okay, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And it's in my head. I'm like, do you want to be right? Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be happy? And it's funny. I've started teaching my 10-year-old that, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Mm-hmm. Which one do you want to be? Because sometimes you can't be both. So those are my two favorite. I couldn't choose between.
Those are fantastic. More importantly, it's like what we teach our children, right? Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And I watched my parents fight about who was right for 30 years.
Yes.
The message about being happy, right, was not delivered well, right? It was always about who would no, fuck no.
It seemed like happiness was like this benefit that other magical families had that wasn't really important in my house.
Right. It was okay. Yeah. Wow. Beautiful message. Okay. So if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would that be?
You're worth it. You're absolutely worth getting sober for. I mean, that's the most important thing I can say to anybody.
I love it. You're worth it. It's so difficult. And it's one thing to say you're worth it. It's another thing to say I'm worth it and I deserve it. Mm-hmm. And I've watched people that couldn't verbalize or repeat those two phrases. I'm worth it.
No, God, no. It took me almost 20 years.
It evokes such an emotional state. It's so sensitive. It's so emotional that saying I'm worth it, right? Is at some point the waterworks come out because we just don't believe we are, right? And every single one of us, if you're alive and breathing, you're worth it.
You're worth it.
You're worth it. And that's how we're going to close, folks. Wow, Cyndy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I had fun.
Right?
Let's do it again.
Okay. Rock and roll. Absolutely. All right. This is one of the greatest joys of my life is doing interviews. Well, everybody leaves so pumped.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You'll conquer the world.
Yeah. You're going to leave. I've had people PM me right afterwards like, dude, I feel like that scene in Braveheart, right?
Freedom.
Oh shit. That
was awesome.
Good. So good. All right, folks, we've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or endorse any 12-Step Anonymous program.